Happy Friday, everybody. Hope you're doing well. This is To The Point. As we prepare for another weekend, we have a lot to dive into to prepare you for what's to come in the world of sports. We got some NFL. We're going to talk picks later, look at the spreads for the games this upcoming weekend, the college football slate. 2 regular weeks left in college football before we get to the championship weekend. I'm not happy about that because it's less football. We got some injuries in the NHL. I want to talk about the Boston Bruins a little bit and what they've done so far this year, which is just staggering to me. Draymond Green suspended in the NBA. The Warriors are a game under 500. So we have a lot to dive into. Watching hockey, I've heard this online. It's been a slow week in the NHL. I disagree with that. There are games to watch. There's interesting storylines. You just have to find them. You just have to watch games that don't involve Canadian teams sometimes, and that's a good thing because for the last 30 years, an American team has won the Stanley Cup. But again, you can't get everybody to do everything, right? I'm watching the Boston Bruins Buffalo Sabres game this week, and Boston just shellacks the Sabres, and it's almost American Thanksgiving, which is kind of a cutoff for what you think a team's going to be. And the NHL is bottled up right now, so it might be more interesting, more wide open than past seasons because a lot of teams are 500, a lot of teams are still hanging in there, and there's been some teams that have had, poor starts, like the Edmonton Oilers, like the Tampa Bay Lightning. I would throw in there. Toronto hasn't been exactly fantastic. New Jersey Devils have had their ups and downs. But Boston has been the class of the Eastern Conference like they were last season. And I thought before the season that Boston was not going to be a great team. They lose their top 2 centers. They don't really replace them. They have Hampus Lindholm, but if you look at his just overall numbers, if you look at his points, he has 1 goal in the season in the team's first 16 games. If you would have told you that, that's not exactly where you see Hampus Lindholm. But I pinpointed 2 reasons why the team has been so successful. And it's not even goaltending, because both goalies have been sublime, but it's more than just goaltending and having a great tandem. Number 1 is just a small picture thing. Brandon Carlo has been phenomenal over the first 16 games of this season. Boston has this record, and they didn't have their best defenseman, Charlie McAvoy, for 4 of them. He was suspended for that blindside hit, which was on, is that the Florida game? Might have been on Sam Bennett. They didn't have McAvoy. To me, Brandon Carlo is one of the biggest reasons, and it's just the way he's playing. I see a more aggressive guy. Brandon Carlo used to be Mr. Shutdown defenseman. Don't take a whole lot of chances. Be secure. Be safe. Be in the right position. And there's nothing wrong with that. As you all know, I love those defensemen. I love players that know who they are, that have an understanding of what their limitations are. And some players put too many limitations on themselves at times. And I think Brandon Carlo's one of those guys. Brandon Carlo's not just a number 5, 6 defenseman. He has more to him. He has more to his game, more to bring to the proverbial table. You're watching Brandon Carlo so far this season. He's stepping up into the play. He's pinching. He's being more aggressive. He's stepping up in the neutral zone to eliminate the opposing team's attack. You want to go 5-on-5 into the zone. He's stepping up. It blocks momentum. It stops them from getting traction going into his own zone. Breaks up the play entirely. He's gone from having a view of playing, let's say, 120 feet, where He's playing in his own zone all the time. He goes to the blue line, but he's not exactly stepping in. So we'll give you 20 feet there. The neutral zone, that's kind of Sweden. And he doesn't go below, the opposing team's blue line when he's in the opposite zone. He's become basically a 200-foot player. He's aggressive in the neutral zone. He's aggressive in their zone, and he's getting more scoring chances. He's got more goals than any defenseman on the Bruins this year. And you just see a more confident player. A guy that is kind of spreading his wings a little bit. That's allowing the game to kind of... What he's doing is he's taking the game over. He's saying, I'm not going to let the game come to me. I'm going to bring myself to the game. He's 26, be 27 next week. So he's been in the league since 2016-17. To me, this is the best version. He only has 4 points. But his level of play is great. His career high in points is only 16. But he's doing more to create opportunities, to eliminate opponent team scoring chances, which leads to guys like, we'll then pivot the conversation into the big picture view. I thought the Boston dynasty was going to crash because they didn't have the pieces to hold it up. But through almost a quarter of the season, they have been as good as any team right there with the Vegas Golden Knights. I underestimated a player that I don't know if there's people in Boston who do not like this player as much as I do. That's David Pastrnak. This Boston dynasty, this Boston, to use a notion from the Miami Heat, this Boston culture can continue because David Pastrnak is there. David Pastrnak is unselfish. David Pastrnak is a team player. David Pastrnak is a winner. And I knew all those things, but I kind of forgot them. David's got 11 goals on the season, which is great. The league leaders, Matthews and Reinhart and Brock Besser with 13. So he's right in the mix. He won the Rocket Richard last year alongside McDavid. So he knows how to score goals. But I'm seeing a guy make an extra pass when he has the option to score a goal, or maybe he'll score, but it's close. But he's going to make the extra pass because it's the smarter play, and it's going to be guaranteed to go in the net. I could take a shot from a bad angle, but it might rim out. No, I'm going to make this play. I'll block a shot. Pasternak's always been a guy who likes to throw hits. He likes to mix it up. He's a physical player. He's got some snarl. He's got some bite to his game. He can keep the old way alive because he has been in it forever. He played with Marchand and Bergeron, two guys who are selfless players. You could look at his contract and say he took as much as he could. He could make more money on the open market. He's that damn good. He's as good as any winger. He's as good as Rantanen. He's better than Marner. Sorry, Leafs fans. He's better than Bill Nylander. He's as good as anybody. And he's fantastic at the hardest thing to do in the league, and that's score goals. And he's been on a winning team for a long time. I think for Boston to be a legitimate Stanley Cup threat, they need another center iceman, which they can address. The Calgary Flames have won a couple games in a row, beating Montreal and Vancouver on a back-to-back, and Vancouver's been playing a lot of hockey lately, and The team has some momentum. You feel like there's a spark there, but then again, I'm not buying into it yet. I don't think they're a great team. Jonathan Huberdeau scored a goal for the first time in forever, and there's pieces writing this morning, but I was going to turn it around. It's all great. Okay. I love a pom-pom piece as much as the next person. Lie. But hey, I read it. So kudos to the great people at The Athletic. But is Elias Lindholm going to stick around in Calgary? Fight your way till March to make the playoffs and give it the old college try? Is that the play? What's interesting for Calgary and keeping it attached to Boston is the supposed deadly conference, which is the East, which is what you'll hear, as I kind of talked about the other day. So competitive and the teams are so close, blah, 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 blah. Not true. It's a lot of bad hockey in the East. For Boston to pick the bones of some of these teams that they could look at, like a Calgary, like a St. Louis, perhaps. The West, in particular, the Pacific Division, has really been established. The Vegas Golden Knights are in first place. They might lose a game here and there. They might play a game against Montreal where they want to throw away the game tape like they did last night. But guess what? They won the game 6-5. And who gives a shit? You got the 2 points. And you're playing well. Vancouver. You lose to a Calgary team. Them's the breaks. But you played Seattle and you fought back, or the Islanders, and you fought back and won that game on Wednesday. So it's a back-to-back, and you've been playing a lot of hockey, and you're out east. Okay. Whatever. But Vancouver's kind of established themselves as a pretty damn good team. Then there's the Los Angeles Kings, who are always lurking, who are always quiet, laying in the weeds. And they beat a Florida team last night, and Florida's been on a roll. Panthers are playing great. The Panthers might get Montour and Ekblad both back next week as the turkey gets put on the table for the Americans, which would be a nice little addition to an already good team that was in the Stanley Cup final last year. But I digress. So for Calgary, you going to surpass any of those three teams? You want to be in a wild card race the whole year with a team full of expiring players? Lindholm, Hanifin, Zadorov, Tanev. Those four guys are the nucleus of their team. Are the biggest building blocks, are the nucleus of the group. Do you want to keep a bunch of expiring contracts together towards the end of the year with none of them unsigned to just get into a wild card spot, then lose in the first round of the playoffs? Well, that sounds like fun. What, are you going to get 2 home dates? Think you'll push it to 6? Wouldn't bet on it. So, there's decisions. Teams will be looking at it. Boston, I think Lindholm is the perfect fit. I thought Scheifele was going to be the guy, but Scheifele re-upped in Winnipeg, and credit to Winnipeg, they've been really good so far this year. Kyle Connor's on a tear. Scheifele's playing good hockey. Hellebuck, we'll talk more about Winnipeg next week. They have an interesting weekend. They got the Sabres tonight, and they got my pesky Coyotes on Saturday. The Coyotes are a pretty damn good team, too. But to me, Lindholm is a version of Patrice Bergeron that would just come in, cause no drama, no disruption, slide in, and be a really good center. Because he can play, he can score goals, he's a great passer, he's not selfish. You could say he was the system of a great line with Tkachuk and Gaudreau, and there's some truth to that. but who isn't a system of a great line? The one player that you could throw in the last 20 years that seems to succeed without having a great line mate is Sidney Crosby. He's the anomaly. He likes to play with fourth liners like Chris Kunitz and Pascal Dupuis. Connor McDavid was playing with Leon Draisaitl and still is most shifts for the majority of his career. He's not so great when he's playing with Derek Ryan and Klim Kostin. Is Lindholm better with great players on his line? Yeah. Well, I just talked about David Pastrnak. Wouldn't that be fun to put him at center and have David Pastrnak, number 88, on your wing? Who's not signing up for that party? Who's not down for that? I think he would be. I think he'd be excited. I think it'd be a nice change of pace after having Jonathan Huberdeau, Mr. Lollygag, score a goal every 8 games and do nothing the other 6 on my line. But that's just, dealer's choice. They make similar money. I know I'd take. Be lots of time to talk about potential moves because I think the Calgary Flames are going to be the biggest seller of when the deadline comes around. I think they'll make trades before the deadline because teams are going to be in need. Teams are going to want to. Teams are close, as we've discussed. Teams are still figuring out who are we. Danny Briere and co. in Philadelphia, I don't think they expected the team to be a point out of the playoff spot in mid-November. But they are. They're a game over 500. Wow. I don't think Danny Briere expected the Flyers to have more points than the Penguins and the Islanders. But they are. Who's another team you could throw in that mix? Let's see. There's some negative ones. I don't think that the Ottawa Senators expected to be last in the Atlantic Division. But they are. Minnesota. 12 points. One more than the Oilers. I don't think they expected that mid-November. I don't think they expected to be 6 points back of the pesky, the frisky Desert Dogs in Arizona, who are 2 games over 5. I don't think they expected that, but hey. But it's interesting. Games going on in Sweden currently. We had Ottawa, Detroit yesterday. Very entertaining game. Chaotic. It was 4-0 Ottawa. 4 straight from Detroit. Ends up going to overtime, and my guy Timmy Stützle gets the overtime winner. 2 teams that have massive flaws. Ottawa, a team that should play better defensively, but they don't for whatever reason. Chychrun had a mixed bag of a game yesterday, and he's had a lot of those lately. I like him a lot, but Jake Sanderson's been a better player. You have Detroit on a back-to-back against the Toronto Maple Leafs today. That's a 3 o'clock start this afternoon. I got to give credit to the Leafs. I don't think they wanted to go over to do this. I mean, no team did. Minnesota doesn't want to be there. Ottawa doesn't, and neither does Detroit. But you're over there, and you're going to play the games. I don't think it was sold out yesterday, which wasn't great. I watched that game. There were some empty seats, which isn't great for the look of this, whatever they're calling it, overseas series or Sweden, whatever it is, European series. What I give Toronto credit for is both their games are road games this week. So they keep their home dates. And they get both teams on a back-to-back. Detroit played yesterday, they get Detroit today. Minnesota plays tomorrow, and they get Minnesota Sunday morning, bright and early at 9 a.m. The power of the brand, the power of the Maple Leaf to go over there. Bill Nylander looks like he's having a good time. Talk of the town. Ask him about his extension, doesn't really get into it. He doesn't give you much in interviews. Now, although we look alike, we're very different in that way. I'm not afraid to share an opinion. If you couldn't tell. But Maple Leafs, Detroit today, no John Klingberg, which is a moral victory in and of itself. Detroit's missing one of their starters. It'll be Alex Lyon, the longtime AHL veteran in between the pipes for the Red Wings. These games are fine. I like having something to watch this afternoon. 9 a.m. on Sunday. I've been used to watching the NFL at 10:30, so again, something to watch. Minnesota and Ottawa's tomorrow at noon. So I'm here for it. I prefer to do this than do, 4 outdoor games a year. The outdoor games are going nowhere. They're making I read what the Edmonton Calgary game, the amount of money they made off that. They have a outdoor game in Seattle on January 1st. And then there's a pair of outdoor games back-to-back days in the New York area in February. So, do I think this is growing the game going to Sweden where they've had a great hockey spirit, a love for hockey for a long time? I do not. But then again, if you go to Australia for a preseason game, I don't think you're growing the game in Australia. Because I don't think people give a shit about hockey in Australia, and I doubt they ever will. So to be fair to the NHL, I don't know if you can win in this situation. But I don't think it's a win if you don't sell out the games in a small stadium in Sweden. Maybe it did. I'm sure they announced. That's what they do. They announced it's a sellout. I saw some empty seats. I predict it'll be a sellout for the Leaf game today. But wait to see. Tage Thompson. Just talk briefly about Buffalo. They get crushed by the Bruins. They're in Winnipeg tonight. They haven't had a great start to the season. And their best player was injured twice on Tuesday night. And he's out for at least a month. Which I thought originally hurt his hand. I thought he might have really tweaked his hamstring. But he's out a month for the Buffalo Sabres. I think that's the nail in the coffin for the season for the Buffalo Sabres. I didn't think they'd be a playoff team. I thought Ottawa was going to be. Buffalo's played 16 games. They have 15 points. They're a game under 500. But Tage Thompson is the engine of that team. He's their best player. The straw that stirs the drink. I love Owen Power, and Rasmus Dahlin's fantastic. But banking on Devin Levi, who's just fresh out of college to play every other night, banking on Dylan Cousins to take another step in his development this quickly, JJ Peterka, who I actually think's played quite well in his sophomore season in the NHL, I think it's a stretch. They need a lot to go right. For them to get in. Jack Quinn's also with an Achilles injury. They're not scoring goals. They scored 2.8 goals a game, which is tied for 22nd in the league. They're 27th in shots on goal per game. They have the 29th out of 32 worst power plays. 31st in face-off percentage. This team just isn't very good. This is a year where Buffalo, Tage is out. They're not punting on their season internally. But I think Kevin Adams is looking at the situation. You look at it rationally and figuring out where is this team going? What can we legitimately accomplish the rest of this year? If we're talking about trades, if we're talking about a team, if I'm Buffalo, I am in the market and I could be a buyer at the deadline and still miss the playoffs. I think this team needs some players that have been around the block. They have a very young team. A top six winger, a guy that can play a bottom six role for a team. Finding those teams and saying, let's make a deal. We'll give you draft picks because guess what? Our draft picks are going to be pretty good because we're not a great team either. Banking on the draft to save your bacon over and over again, Buffalo's been doing it for 12 years. And they haven't made the playoffs. And I think they built a good team. And I think they're close to being a playoff team, but I think they're 2 or 3 players away from legitimately getting there. I talked in the summer. You sign Connor Clifton, you sign Eric Johnson. Those 2 players are Band-Aids on a bullet hole. They're not guys you want. They're not fixing the issue. Up front, Kyle Oposo's your captain. He's great. He's beloved. Zemgus Jurgensen has been a Buffalo Sabre since he came over from Latvia. He wears a letter. He's fantastic. Those 2 guys are up there in age. They don't bring a whole lot to the table. Sometimes you need to find a third liner that knows he's a third liner that can play. New Jersey targeting Timo Meier, saying, guess what? He's been in big playoff games. He's played. We'll give up. We have to trade a lot for him, but we think it's worth it. And New Jersey's had their problems so far this year, but when Jack Hughes comes back, they'll be fine. I thought it was impressive the way they battled last night to beat Pittsburgh on the road. That was a big win for that team. Buffalo's young everywhere, and that's a good thing, but it's also a bad thing. Because these young players make mistakes. They don't know what they don't know. Tage Thompson hardly knew. He was playing in the American League till he was 25. He wasn't an established NHLer. Think of the Edmonton Oilers power forwards. Vander Kane, Zach Hyman. They've been so beneficial. Hard to make trades in division, but would Josh Anderson, would Montreal deal him to Buffalo? Travis Konechny. He's got a year left after this one. I think there's going to be a lot of suitors for Travis Konechny. Because the guy can flat out play. He's a competitive bastard, and he's just a pain in the ass. But if I'm Danny Briere, I'll make a trade with Buffalo because I'm probably going to get a better pick, which is what Philly values. The haul of players in return, who cares if you're a bad team? I don't want players right now. The players that are going to help me are in 3 years. Philly is in the position that Buffalo was in 3 to 4 years ago, where, we still have some good players for Philly. Konechny, Carter Hart's played well. Cam Atkinson has had a resurgence. Couturier is still on this roster. Owen Tippett, I would keep. But we got some good guys. But we're not good enough to compete. This roster isn't good enough to make the playoffs in all likelihood. So let me trade some good players for draft picks. for futures so I can build a team that I want to build. Not the team that was here before I got here. That was never going to be good enough. That's one thing I think general managers overlook is, I have to make this trade. Or it could be the opposite, because again, I'm not in these meetings. But a team that is 10 points out of the final playoff spot, we have to sell. We have to be a seller. Yes and no. Because you can add and help your team the next year if you get a guy with term. Or if you sign the player right away and you know he's on your team. Work out a sign and trade. Figure it out. Sign an extension the second he walks in the door. Players will do it. They want the money. They want the security. Most of these guys are not Austin Matthews where they're going to be cavalier. They're going to have bravado and go, no, I'm going to take this number and I'm going to hang around and wait for a contract. I would play it like Austin. I think it's smarter, but I think 9 times out of 10, players want the security, they want the years, and they're going to take it without hesitation. So knowing that, use that leverage, use that understanding to go, hey, Philly. Yeah, it's Buffalo. Oh, hey, Kevin. Yeah, how you doing? Hey, Danny. Yeah, see, I know you're struggling. We're also going to miss the playoffs. See you at the pool bar in Cabo in like a week. Yeah, cool, bro. But what are you doing with Konechny? Well, we're getting some calls. Boston kind of wants him, and the Leafs want him, but they can't afford him. But they want him, right. But, you going to take a first rounder from the Leafs? Well, I was thinking about it, Kevin, because, it's a first rounder. Right. But, what if they go to the second round again? God forbid, what if they win 2 rounds? Then your pick's 26. Oh, you're right. Yeah, it's not a great pick, right? Well, see, I really like Konechny. Right. And I could trade you our first round pick plus. Oh, really? You do that? Yeah. I could give you our first rounder, which could be like the 10th, 12th pick right behind you. Right. And Jack Quinn's had some injury problems, but maybe he'll be better. Maybe it's changes it. Right. Yeah, that'd be interesting. Let me think about that. Let me talk to Keith Jones and my other Clash of Clans over here, Torts. Go back to you. Okay, sounds good. See, that could be the conversation. The team that really wants him, the team that wants to win the cup wants him, who cares? We might get better draft picks. It might help our team down the line more. Would you rather pick 10th or would you rather pick 26th? 10th, 26th. I know which one I'd pick. I use this example. On my arm, I have a tattoo of scales. 10 on one side, 26 on the other. Which one's weighs more? Which one sounds better? If you saw the video, I almost forgot where that tattoo was, but it's right in front of me. When you have more than one, it kind of gets confusing. Or more than 15 now, but nevertheless. That's where I kind of view Buffalo. Maybe they'll go on a run. Maybe they'll get the season's not over, but I do not have high hopes. Because of the circumstances, because of how young they are. But I don't think it should signal we're selling. Come deadline, we have to sell. Come the deadline, we just got to get rid of these players. No. Well, if you want to sell some pieces that are on expirings, yes, do it. Absolutely. But I think you can use some of those picks to help you make a deal for a player that can help you in the future season, like a Konechny. That's just a player that comes to mind. I think he'd help that team. Give them some bite, give them an identity. a new nucleus to the locker room. He's the ultimate spark plug. I'm a fan. Blue Jackets have lost 7 in a row. They're quietly on a tailspin. I don't know what's going to happen with the Blue Jackets. They had the whole Babcock debacle, interim head coach, Patrick Laine's breaking sticks because he can't do anything right. Did that big sign and trade with Damon Severson of the New Jersey Devils. Tessier's come back over from France after being out last season. Hasn't exactly been great. Trade for Provorov, who's been fine. He's playing big minutes, but he's going to be Provorov. Marchenko's been good. I think he's been their best player so far this year. And they got a piece that I like, Jiricek. And for a rookie, I think he's been good. But Goodrow and Laine. Goodrow played 14 minutes and 42 seconds last night and did not play in the last 7 minutes of the game. Neither did Laine. Neither guy was on the ice, obviously, when they were trying to tie the game. Johnny Gaudreau's got 6 points in 17 games. He's got 1 goal. Points aren't everything to me. When it's Johnny Gaudreau, it has to be. That's all he does. Laine's played 8 games. He's got 3 points with 2 goals. So the highest paid players, the guy they expect to produce, have been flat out disasters. Kent Johnson's in the American League. Goaltending's been bad. Basically an interim head coach. Columbus looked himself in the mirror and said, we have Mike Babcock. He's going to coach this team to being better than we expect. We're in the Metropolitan Division, which isn't that great, which was a good read, but they haven't capitalized on it. Pittsburgh, a team like Philly, who we just talked about, has been better than Columbus, obviously. Columbus has 4 wins and it's November 17th. This is the end of the line for their longtime general manager, Jarmo Kekalainen. He's been there a long time. He's gone through different waves of see you later, Panarin, see you later, Bobrovsky. Trade for Matt Duchene at the deadline so he can win a playoff round. Columbus has been interesting. Never a great organization. Never a team that's really put it all together. But they're here. The team's in disarray. The team's made some bad signings. They thought the Torts era was bad. It's never been the same since. He was great for them, honestly. The Babcock decision, I think the Babcock decision to not bring him in was more of a mistake than actually hiring him in the first place, but I'm on the minority of that. I won't talk much about Columbus this year because they're not really worth discussing. But this is a team that's going to be bad. This is a team that's going to make changes. And they made a lot of mistakes in the summertime. A lot of mistakes. And I hope Johnny Gaudreau enjoys the golf. Enjoys being close, but not too close to his family. Making less money than he did in Calgary because you're playing 14 minutes a night and your team stinks. And you're going to be missing the playoffs for your second straight year in Columbus. And in all likelihood, your point totals will drop again. Oddly enough, the Huberdeau-Gaudreau swap, if you just look at it that way and you don't include Matthew Tkachuk, it isn't that drastic. Because both guys haven't been good in their new locations. This weekend, we got those Sweden games that I talked about. Sabres, Jets, Panthers, Ducks this evening. Edmonton and Tampa tomorrow afternoon. That's interesting. Rangers, Devils, Montreal in Calgary. Colorado and Dallas, a matchup of two heavyweights in the Central Division. Dallas has been unbelievable as of late. Vegas on a back-to-back in Philly, then in Pittsburgh. So we got some good hockey this weekend, some interesting storylines to follow. We'll touch base on it on Monday. Let's pivot to the NFL. Last night on paper, going in, we had the best Thursday night football game of the year. The 5-4 Bengals meeting the 7-3 Ravens in Baltimore. Both teams coming off devastating losses, Cincinnati to C.J. Stroud and the Houston Texans, and Baltimore dropping one to the Cleveland Browns. Well, a number of interesting things from last night. It's a Thursday night, and the injuries piled up. Mark Andrews, after a tackle from Logan Wilson, confirmed today he is done for the season. Going to need surgery on his ankle. Pretty serious injury according to John Harbaugh. I thought Lamar Jackson was going to lead the game in the first quarter after another tackle from Logan Wilson on the sideline. But the bigger news of the night was Joe Burrow, who hurt himself in the first quarter but came back to play, then gets sacked, gets up favoring his wrist, seemingly a couple fingers, and he tries to throw a pass and he has to exit from the game. Jake Browning came in before the half, and Jake Browning finished the game, Cincinnati losing to Baltimore. Couple of things here. I thought Lamar played really well last night. The Ravens are now 8-3. A bounce back for them. They needed that game. This team can be as dynamic as any offense in the NFL. Zay Flowers, Odell, Nelson Aguilar, Gus Edwards. Too bad no Mark Andrews, but they do have Isaiah Likely. They do have Charlie Collar, who was very good at Iowa State in his NCAA career. So they have depth at the tight end position. This team can score with anybody. So the Ravens, you beat a team without Joe Burrow, it doesn't matter. It's about getting wins at this point. It's about for them battling to see if they can get number one spot in the AFC. Get that bye. Have time to recover. Get guys back from injuries. Marlon Humphrey did not play last night. Ronnie Stanley, their left tackle, did not play well last night. But their defense did what it had to do. The simulated pressures, the amount of times that Joe Burrow or Jake Browning were under duress, they had to take big hits, were in tough situations. That is what Baltimore can do. They do not have a singular player on their defense other than maybe Roquan Smith that you'll go, he's an all-pro, he's a stud, he's a star. But Jadeveon Clowney, Micah Owe, Marlon Humphrey when he is active and he's either playing corner or you see him blitz. This team can get to the quarterback. They've been doing it all year long. And looking at Baltimore and Cleveland, who have played twice, both teams have great defenses. But Baltimore has a great defense paired with an offense that can match any team in the league when it comes to weapons and how they deploy them. So that's what makes Baltimore so scary for the opposition. I hate that Mark Andrews is out. He's one of the best tight ends in the league. He's so talented. He can do it all. He's Lamar's safety net. Every time you need a third down catch, you go to Mark Andrews. But he's done for the season. So you need to find a way to overcome that. To the Bengals side of things. Early on in the game, I love what the Bengals were doing. They were the team that had the least amount of receiving yards by tight ends in the NFL. But over the last 2 to 3 weeks, they've incorporated them. Tanner Hudson, who was formerly with Tampa Bay with Tom Brady. Osai Asai, finding Irv Smith Jr. They were running routes to get the guys involved and deploying the tight ends. Loved it. Here's the deal, however. What you love it, you're going through the game. Great, they're using their tight ends like I thought should have been doing for a long time. But then you get to the Joe Burrow injury and it clouds over everything. You kind of forget about the rest of the game, how the team was playing, how it looked. They competed against Baltimore. They didn't cover the spread, of course. They ended up losing the game by 2 touchdowns. Jake Browning got sacked 3 times, threw a touchdown pass, didn't turn the ball over, to his credit. But he's not a great quarterback. Jamar Chase had 2 catches. Tanner Hudson led the team in receiving yards. Joe Burrow being injured for really the second time this season, we thought we were past it. This looked like a serious injury. He couldn't throw the football. He grimaced when he threw. I think it's a wrist injury. Before the game, you saw him walking in. It was taped up. Here's the problem with that. Joe Burrow was not on the injured list before the start of the game. It is a job of the NFL teams to put an injury report out and to have the players that are injured on the list. If you have an injured player that is not on the list, you can be penalized, you can be fined, and you're in trouble for not doing that. It's part of the job. Way back when, the New England Patriots were fined one of the many times that they tried to cheat for not having Tom Brady on the injury list for a concussion. To me, this is simple. Joe Burrow had a wrist injury. It's a short week. It's on a Thursday. You probably don't want to make it public. The teams wouldn't tell anybody. They wouldn't tell him if he had any kind of injury. But these sports leagues are they're in bed with the gambling companies. Bet365, DraftKings, FanDuel, which is what I use every week to talk about the football lines. Those are what make money. Those are your biggest partners. Sure, you care about FedEx and you care about Jake from State Farm and whatever else people are doing these days. But the biggest partner you have, every damn commercial that you see when you're watching a sporting event, is a betting company. These podcasts they're exploding. I tell this to my people around me. You know you're doing well when you have a betting company that partners with you. That's when you are in the green. That's when you are starting to make hay. You are in a position of power. The NFL loves DraftKings, loves FanDuel, loves whatever ESPN's new gambling company is going to be with Barstool Sports that they're currently working on. That's where they make their money. But Joe Burrow has to be on the injury list because gambling people need to know. I saw a lot of people on Twitter last night that were pissed that they didn't get their money back from the result. A lot of people had the Bengals plus 3.5. I forgot to bet the game. I was going to bet the Bengals, quite frankly, last night on the road against Baltimore. I didn't know Joe Burrow was injured. I didn't know he was going through something. It's easy when you can announce Deshaun Watson's done for the year, shoulder surgery. That's easy, done. Mark Andrews done for the season. But when you're going into a game, the public needs to know what's up. Who's injured? What kind of injury do you have? How much every week, if you're watching these NFL shows, you watch NFL Live, which is really good. Adam Schefter's always saying they were limited at practice, or this player did not practice. He's ruling out. And Saturday night, you hear who's active and who's inactive for NFL games. It used to be game time. There's no more game time decisions because people need to know when they place their bets. The NHL still does this bullshit with starting goalies. It's going to stop. It will eventually, coaches will have to say the night before or at noon of a game day, because guess what? People need to know when they're gambling. Sometimes it doesn't matter if you have a tandem goaltending, but hey, if it's Alex Lyon or James Reimer, I'd like to know. It's Alex Lyon today if you're betting the Maple Leafs, by the way. Alex Lyon, third stringer against the Maple Leafs. But the Bengals should be fined. The Bengals, quite frankly, I don't think it's crazy to think about taking away a draft pick for this malfeasance. It's really simple. Someone is injured, you put it on the injury report. It's like a teacher not taking attendance. Oh, Noah was not here today? Oh, no, he was here. I clicked it. No, he's here. Believe me, I'd love that teacher. But that's not how it works. Absent. And they continue to pile up. Before a game, Joe Burrow, questionable wrist. Did he practice? That has to be included also. And you put Joe Burrow on the list, you mention his practice time, and it also goes on there, what's his status? Is he questionable? Is he doubtful? Is he going to play? That goes on there as well. It has to be included, and he was not. And it was wrapped before he was walking into the stadium, and it was wrapped. He didn't last a half of football playing with this injury. It's cheating the public more than it is cheating the game. But that's the world we live in. That's the way it is. It's gambling. That's the way the world works. That's where the money's coming from. The NFL, the NHL, the MLB, that's where they are. They want to be in with these betting companies. So it said on Twitter today that the NFL is looking into it. I think the Bengals are going to be punished. And rightfully so. Because you tried to sneak one past, but you couldn't do it. But hey, that's just one man's opinion. When it comes to the Bengals, they're now 5-5. They're in the same position as the Bills. They have no wiggle room. They can make no mistakes. But if Joe Burrow is hurt, I think the Bengals are screwed. Nothing against Jake Browning, but he's not Joe Burrow. And this team has had a lot of pitfalls so far this season. Injury to Joe Burrow, injury to T. Higgins. Bengals down the stretch. Host the Steelers next weekend. At the Jaguars. Host the Colts. Host Josh Dobbs and the Vikings. At the Steelers. At the Chiefs. Host the Browns. Not an easy schedule. They've been struggling in the AFC. They've now lost to Baltimore. They've lost to Cleveland. Might have lost to Baltimore twice, now that I think about it. Which I think they have. They have. They're 0-2 against the Ravens this season. If You're behind the Browns, you're behind the Steelers, you're behind the Ravens in your own division. Toughest division in football. Have to wait and hear on Joe Burrow if he's even on the injured list for week 12. But it's just it's a simple thing you have to do. And a lot of people are angry online. And again, these betting companies are going to be talking to Roger Goodell and the NFL going, what the hell happened? Because all these games are huge. And a lot of money comes in. And yes, people are going to lose bets. I do it every weekend, betting on the NFL. But you want to be able to have the full extent of the information before you place the bet, which the betting companies cannot claim happened last night. The rest of the weekend in the NFL. Some interesting games coming up. Start with Arizona at Houston. Houston's a 4.5-point home favorite. Both are coming off victories. Arizona with a walk-off over the Falcons. Houston edging out the Bengals, who lost last night. Kyler looked really good, and you're playing against C.J. Stroud, who might be the MVP of the league right now. Neither team's defense is all that elite. Houston gives up a lot of points. Houston can allow teams to run the ball on them. Absolutely. Kyler looked dynamic in his first game. I think for Houston, you see the Bengals lose last night. You saw the Bills lose on Monday night. You feel a little momentum. You're like, okay, we're ahead of these teams. CJ Stroud's probably saying, I'm better than these quarterbacks, which he might be. We got the team to do this. I think the Cardinals are always better than their record. They're 2-8. They have their flaws, absolutely. It's an interesting number because, again, two teams that picked very high in the draft. Two teams that on paper aren't very good, but yet Houston is. Noah Brown, who had 175 yards last week, has not practiced this week, so he might not be active. But Nico Collins is tracking to come back. Tank Dell, Robert Woods. I'm going to take Houston minus the points at home. Houston minus 4.5. Arizona will give them a fight, but I think Houston will eventually pull ahead. Chicago at Detroit. Justin Fields will be back for the Bears on Sunday. He's been out the last 4 games with his thumb injury, but he's back to being the starting quarterback for the Bears. Detroit just won a slugfest against the Chargers. A real momentum game. Dan Campbell on top of the world. But here's the thing. The Bears also coming off a win. The Bears haven't played since last Thursday. It's a divisional game. So there's always weird things that happen in these divisional games. We saw an injury last night. Detroit's defense really struggled against the Chargers, giving up 38 points. They've had some injuries, but they battle through it. To me, Detroit just continues to impress. Jared Goff playing better football. It's a 7.5-point spread. But I'm going to take Detroit. I don't trust the Bears to put up points. I don't trust the Bears defense to stop Jared Goff. It's in Detroit. It's not at Soldier Field. And Detroit, they can put up points on this team. And I think Detroit wins by more. I think it'll be Detroit by, say, 10 points in this game that they beat the Bears. So Detroit minus 7.5. Dallas Cowboys at the Carolina Panthers. This line surprised me. Carolina is obviously the underdog. They're a 10.5-point underdog. I expected this to be more of a 14-point spread. I expected this 14, 15 points. Dallas was a 17.5-point favorite last week against the New York Giants, who are terrible. Carolina obviously coming off the loss to the Bears. No team with huge injuries other than Leighton Vander Esch for the Cowboys, who is done for the season with a neck injury, which is a big loss to that defense, but I don't think it makes a whole lot of difference in this game. Dallas is a great home team. They do have an awful road loss this year, losing to Arizona in week 2. But I don't think that's going to happen again. A bad offensive line with Carolina. A quarterback who is still learning, isn't playing great football, does not have great weapons. I think this is a feeding day for Dallas's defense to prepare, to feel great about themselves before they get their tough games down the stretch. Cowboys have the Washington football team on Thanksgiving. Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, Neville Gallimore, Dorrance Armstrong. They feed. I don't understand why it's 10.5, but Dallas will cover that number. They win by 2 touchdowns plus. Stupid line. Dallas minus 10.5. Las Vegas Raiders, Antonio Pierce, 2 wins in a row, head down to South Beach to play the Dolphins. Dolphins are coming off a bye, coming off their loss to Kansas City in London. Miami's a 12.5 point home favorite. Like, this line is bigger than the Dallas game, which, again, surprises me. Miami's a great offensive team. Absolutely. No doubt about it. Tua to Tyreek to Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle missed a practice this week. So did Chase Claypool. Sounds like Miami's offensive line will be intact. So that's a positive. But again, 12.5. Vegas is not an offensive threat. They don't score a lot of points. However, I do respect their defense. Max Crosby is one of the best defensive players in the league. He can wreck games. Marcus Peters can get a pick 6 whenever he wants, when he wants to make a big play. I don't think the Raiders are a good team, but they are 5-5. I give them credit for that. This team has a new state about them. I want to see Jalen Ramsey play against Devontae Adams. That'll be a lot of fun in this game. Those two match up against one another. This game scares me because I know where I want to go. I don't know why it's 12.5. Again, this is a bigger line than the Dallas game. Miami's at home. Okay, 2.5 points for a 12.5 point spread at home. Not for me. Miami has not beaten a good team this year, and that's a fact. They have not beaten a team with a winning record. They still won't this week because Vegas is 5-5. The Miami Dolphins are going to win this game. The Miami Dolphins have a very favorable schedule over the next little while. But kind of what we learned this year in the NFL is there's no great team. Weird things happen every week, and who knows where the chips are gonna lay. If you're in a survivor pool, you pick the Dolphins. Obviously, they're going to win this game. But as a gambler, I think Vegas can cover this spread. Miami can score. They're coming off a bye. They are a good team, and they've beat up on bad teams. This is a hedge, but I'd pick Vegas plus 12.5. Because there's something weird about this line. I don't think Vegas is a 12.5 point. They're not 12.5 points lesser than the Dolphins. Yes, the Dolphins are 6-3. The Dolphins are 6-3 without an impressive victory. That doesn't mean they won't win the game. Like I said, I think they're going to win the game. All I care about is the spread. Los Angeles Chargers head to Green Bay. Chargers coming off that tough game against the Lions. You lose by 3 in a walk-off field goal. You're in it the whole way. You battled Keenan Allen, has been phenomenal. Now you head to Green Bay. Green Bay this time of year is not fun. It's freezing. Chargers are obviously playing Los Angeles. You're playing in warmer weathers, warmer climates. That's a better situation. Green Bay's offense has played better as of late. They were in it till the bitter end against the Steelers. What I will say is the Steelers don't put up a whole lot of points. They've been outgained in every game, so there's that. Jordan Love's been better, but I just think the Chargers are a better team than Green Bay. Green Bay can compete for a while with the elements, with the weird Chargers and the way things go in Los Angeles. What I tell you is I wouldn't bet on this game. I hate the Chargers have screwed me so many times. I don't trust the team. When I bet against them, they win. When I bet for them, they don't, or they push, which is useless, like a tie. So I think the Chargers win -3, but stay away from this game. Another weird line. New York Giants at the Washington football team. Tommy DeVito will be back under center for the New York Giants. Tyrod Taylor still not back from injury. Daniel Jones out for the season. No Andrew Thomas. No Evan Neal. Possibly no Saquon Barkley. Jalen Hyatt has not been practicing. The Giants are banged up. But you got the Giants who stink, have 2 wins on the year, and one of them came against the Washington football team. Then you have the Washington football team who are 4-6, and yet they are a 9.5 point home favorite. I like Sam Howell. Terry McLaurin's fantastic. He's taking less sacks. He's making better plays. I think he can be a quarterback of the future somewhere. Maybe it's not Washington, but I think Sam Howell can play. Just one guy's opinion. And I'm well aware that the team in Washington stinks. Sorry, the team in New York stinks. Tommy DeVito still lives at home. His mother does his laundry, all this stuff. They've been talking about it all week. And you're missing so many players. But it's just odd to see a 4-6 team be a 9.5 point home favorite. I try to guess the lines. I listen to Bill Simmons' podcast and I guess the lines before when they do it with them. I had to really, if I was playing, I would have beat both of them this week. This one I was completely off because I thought it would be 7, maybe. A touchdown. I'm feeling crazy. I take the Giants plus 9.5. I don't think they win, but could they cover this spread against a Washington team with Riverboat Ron and basically a rookie quarterback and a team that makes a lot of mistakes in Washington? Absolutely. Giants plus 9.5. Pittsburgh Steelers visiting their division rival, the Cleveland Browns. News this week, Deshaun Watson had a high ankle sprain, and then he had a shoulder injury that's going to require surgery on his AC joint. He's done for the season. Since he was traded from Houston to Cleveland, and it was last week. And oddly enough, he's injured in that half. So all that money that Cleveland spent for him, completely down the drain. For the past couple weeks when Deshaun was out, PJ Walker was the quarterback of the team. But they're not going back to PJ Walker. They're going to their week 4 starter. Once great UCLA quarterback, one of my favorites, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who made the team out of training camp. I think this is a smart decision by Cleveland. They want to make the playoffs. That would be ideal. But I think they're looking at their situation and they realize we're not a Super Bowl threat. We have a defense that could win a Super Bowl, but it's past the trade deadline. We're not going to trade for a quarterback. We'd love to still have Josh Dobbs, who we traded last summer to Arizona. It'd be great to have him, but he's not here. PJ Walker is PJ Walker. He's there if we need him, but let's see what we have in Dorian Thompson-Robinson. If he can be our backup quarterback of the future behind Deshaun Watson. And in these situations, because Deshaun seems to get injured all the time, he can step in and play. And oddly enough, no Deshaun. And yet the Browns are still a favorite at home with Dorian Thompson-Robinson. A divisional game. The Steelers have been outgained every game this season, and yet they're 6-3. TJ Watt's been a wrecking ball. I think he's right up there with Defensive Player of the Year candidacy. They're likely to get Pat Freiermuth back, their great tight end, who did have good chemistry with Kenny Pickett last season. I think he's a big addition to that offense. Two great defenses. Myles Garrett will be everywhere. Two offensive lines that have their warts. Two quarterbacks that you don't exactly trust. I think both these teams are going to run the football a ton. Jerome Ford, Najee Harris, Jalen Warren. End around screens, just getting the ball out of the quarterback's hands, make it simple, in particular for Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who's hardly been on the field. I think it helps him. In week 4, he didn't know he was starting the game until about an hour before. So he has more time. He has the whole week to prepare for a singular opponent. Browns are at home and they are the favorite, but I'm taking the Steelers. Steelers will go into Cleveland, get the win, and prove to 7-3 somehow. Steelers plus 1.5. Tennessee Titans at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Titans had a stinker in Tampa. They only put up 6 points. Will Levis got sacked 5 times. Jags got crushed against San Francisco at home. So both teams looking for some redemption. I think it's a perfect game for the Jags to do that. Tennessee kind of knows where they are. They're 3-6. They're not going to be a playoff team. They want to help Will Levis develop and get better. They might keep it close for a while, but I think the Jags put them over the top just with their firepower. The Jags know that they have some competition in the division now with Houston. CJ Stroud's been playing fantastic. They need to win these games to beat a Tennessee team. Jags -7. Get to the 5 o'clock slate. Tampa Bay Buccaneers visiting the San Francisco 49ers. San Francisco is an 11.5 point home favorite. San Francisco looked fantastic last week. When they are firing on all cylinders, they are hard to beat. Tampa's missing some defensive players. They've been a little banged up. They had an early bye week, which I normally hate for teams, which hasn't helped Tampa. Baker Mayfield's played good, but again, Chase Young, that pass rush. It's a big number, but it's in San Francisco. I would take Tampa. I would take San Francisco. Just because I think they're the better team. Tampa doesn't have a whole lot of firepower. Their offensive line struggles. If you're feeling frisky, take the Bucs, but the smart play is San Francisco. The New York Jets at the Buffalo Bills. Rematch of Week 1. This time it's in Buffalo. Buffalo fired their offensive coordinator, Ken Dorsey. Joe Brady, new interim OC. This is a game on the Bills' schedule that is one of the easiest down the stretch. Jets are 4-5, and they're struggling. Don't score touchdowns. Don't put up points. Betting on the Bills right now it's a stupid way to go. It doesn't make you any money. They're a 7.5-point favorite against the Broncos, and they lost at home. Now, Russell Wilson's a better quarterback than Zach Wilson. The Jets will want to run the football, which I think they're capable of doing against Buffalo. But you just fire a coordinator. When you bring in a new coach, good things happen. Doesn't seem to matter the circumstance. You just find a way to overcome it. Zach Wilson's hasn't been good the last couple weeks. The offensive line for the Jets has not been good. The Jets had their game against the Bills in week 1, and they walked it off, and they found a way to win. Taking the Jets +7 would be a whole lot of fun, but I don't think it's going to happen this week. I think this game could be out of hand quickly. Bills -7. But do I trust the Bills? Absolutely. And I'm not betting this game. Another rematch of week 1. Seattle Seahawks in Los Angeles to play the Rams. Rams coming off a bye, 3-6. Matthew Stafford will be back under center. Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua. Rams have firepower. They beat Seattle in Seattle in week 1. Seattle's just kind of snuck out wins. They snuck out a win against the Washington football team last week. Geno had a great fourth quarter. To me, the Rams are a different team than when they started. They don't have that momentum anymore. They lost Note Boom on the offensive line. A young secondary. Aaron Donald's fantastic, but again, I think Geno will have time to maneuver in the pocket, make plays. It's only 1 point, so again, you have a lot of room to play with either way. Rams, Seahawks, always close games. It's a divisional game. Stafford will play well, but I think Seattle comes out on top. They find a way to win, and they improve to 7-3, which is what they need to do down the stretch, trying to hold court with San Francisco. And the Sunday night game, Minnesota Vikings under Josh Dobbs heading to Denver to play Russell Wilson and the Broncos. Broncos 4-5. In the mix down the stretch, 6-4 Vikings, who might get Joshua Jefferson back on Sunday. Still not determined yet, but he's been practicing. He could be back Sunday night. Josh Dobbs has been phenomenal. Vikings had a great first half against the Saints and then held on in the second to get that win. They have that feel about them. They're playing good football. Josh Dobbs has them believing. I think the Vikings are a good enough team in the NFC to make the playoffs. The Broncos have to look at this game and go, we can win this game. We're 5-5. We're right there with the Jets, with the Bills, with anybody to get in. We've already had our 2 games against Kansas City, so we don't have to worry about that. We get the Raiders again down the stretch. We get the Chargers down the stretch. We can do this. Vikings are a dome team going to Denver to play outside. Again, not easy. Josh Dobbs has played in everything. He's been across the league. He was in Cleveland. He's been in domes. He's played outside. It doesn't matter for him. He finds a way to overcome it. Broncos on a short week. I like the Vikings +2.5 to go into Denver and to get a big win. They can secure this win down the stretch with their schedule, the way they play. I think they'll be a playoff team in the NFC. You get to 7-4, you haven't had your bye week yet. Minnesota will be in a really good spot. TJ Hawkinson is playing as good as any tight end in the league. I think he's played the best this year. More than Kittle, more than Travis Kelce. The Vikings, you go at Broncos, host the Bears, at the Raiders, host the Bengals, which could be different now, host the Lions, host the Packers, at the Lions. It's not murderer's row. A lot of divisional games. If you could split against the Lions somehow, obviously beat the Bears. But I like the Vikings plus 2.5. They can rush the passer. They can score points on offense. The Broncos have a solid defense, and Russell Wilson's playing good. But I think the Vikings will take more chances, and they will overcome the Broncos secondary. That's the NFL this weekend. College slate. Tonight, Colorado at Washington State. Colorado needs to win their last 2 games to be bowl eligible. Washington State had an awesome start to the season. They've been completely floundering. They've lost 4 in a row. So both these teams are on losing streaks in the Pac-12. They play tonight. I like Colorado plus 4.5. I don't know if they win the game. They covered the spread last week against Arizona. I think they'll battle again this week. Plus 4.5, and I think they win the game outright. SEC Cupcake Week. Alabama's hosting Chattanooga. They're a 44.5 point favorite. SEC does this every year. Non-conference game against just a crap team to get over it. I'm not even going to talk. 44.5, spare me. Louisville at the University of Miami. Louisville's got 1 loss. Technically, they're still in the mix to be in the college football playoff. They want to get to the ACC championship game, play against Florida State, see what happens. Miami, 6-4. They win this week, then they get Boston College, who lost last night to Pitt. They'll likely finish 8-4, and that's a great season after going 5-7. So it's a big week for Miami. Their last home game. I'm sure there'll be like 45 people there. Louisville's a good school. Tyler Van Dyke's been struggling. I'd love to take Miami, but I'm not going to. Louisville minus 1.5. Michigan at Maryland. Here's the deal. Jim Harbaugh couldn't coach last week. Well, instead of going to a hearing, talking about stealing signals, all that stuff, he took a 3-game suspension. So he's out for the rest of the regular season. He cannot coach tomorrow at Maryland, and he cannot coach in their regular season finale next weekend against the Ohio State. So no Jim Harbaugh. Other news, just right now. Their linebackers coach was fired after reported new NCAA evidence that details cover up possible booster funding. So Michigan's just completely under fire right now from the Big Ten and from the NCAA. So Chris Partridge was fired. The NCAA's new information includes allegations that a booster nicknamed Uncle T may have partially funded Connor Stalions' advanced scouting operation and that an assistant coach participated in the destruction of computer evidence. Sounds like Watergate, trying to get rid of the paper before the FBI comes in to seize everything. That being said, Michigan may be under turmoil. They may be looked upon as a team that shouldn't be in the college football playoff. They're playing Maryland. It's 19.5 points, but Michigan will cover that number. Michigan minus 19.5. Oklahoma at BYU. Interesting matchup. You don't see these two teams play all that often. Oklahoma's had a great start. They've been floundering. 24.5 in BYU. BYU plus 24.5. They'll cover the number. Rutgers at Penn State. Penn State loses. to Michigan, loses to Ohio State. They fire their offensive coordinator. People hate James Franklin. He doesn't win the big games. Rutgers had a great start to the year. They played Iowa last weekend. They did not put up a point. Penn State's a 20.5-point favorite. I'd love to take Rutgers, but you put up 0 points last week, and you're playing the number 4 defense in the country. I can't. Penn State minus 20.5. Appalachian State at James Madison. James Madison's undefeated, but 2 years. Stupid rule in Division I football. It takes 2 years after you're promoted to Division I to be eligible to be in the college football playoff. So James Madison, even if they go undefeated this season, will not be included. However, College Game Day is in James Madison tomorrow, which is a cool story, and I like that they're there. App State's a good school. App State can put up points. They nearly beat North Carolina earlier in the year. JMU, you're at College Game Day. A lot of hoopla. People care about you for the first time ever. They might win the game. I think App State keeps it close. App State plus 8.5. Utah at Arizona. The Utes, great team at home, not so good on the road. They battled against Washington last week. Washington came out on top. Arizona edged out a win against Colorado. Arizona's been one of the more surprising teams in college football this year in a loaded conference in the Pac-12. They are a 1.5-point underdog at home. Again, Utah without a starting quarterback, without a running back, their top running back for this game. They've had some injuries. I think Arizona wins the game outright. Arizona plus 1.5. Georgia Bulldogs at Tennessee. A line that surprises me. Tennessee is a tough team to play at home, no doubt about it. They beat Alabama at home last year. But part of the thing about that was that Arizona had a great team. They had a better quarterback in Hendon Hooker. They had Jalen Hyatt. They had better running backs. They all went to the NFL. This year, they get crushed by Missouri. They've had losses to Alabama. They're not the team that they were last year. Georgia, on the other hand, is undefeated. Brock Bowers is back. They haven't lost in nearly 3 years. They're not going to slip up in Tennessee. Georgia, minus 10.5. They win by at least 2 touchdowns, might be 3. Illinois at Iowa. The number's 3.5. That's not the interesting thing. Last week, Iowa was the over-under for that game was 28.5. I took the under. It was 22. It's gone up for this game. It's 30.5. Just bet the under. It makes you money every week. Iowa unders pay. Illinois, who can't score, against Iowa, who can't score, 30.5. No chance, toilet pants. Iowa, Illinois, under 30.5. University of North Carolina at Clemson. Interesting game. Clemson got a big win last week where I didn't think they would, but they did. They've kind of found their groove again. They're a tough team to play at home. I'm just going to make sure I got this game right. I wrote them down yesterday, but I'm pretty sure. But North Carolina at Clemson. It's now 7.5. Drake May, to me, this is a big game for him when it comes to possible Heisman, looking at him as a top pick in the draft. Klubnik's played better. Will Shipley, Phil Maffa, they can run the football on North Carolina. Their defense is non-existent. Stay away from this game. I think it's a good game to watch, however. UCLA at USC. UCLA has lost a number of games in a row. Chip Kelly's on the hot seat, and there's been reports if UCLA loses this game, he's going to be fired. Well, he's going to be fired. Because USC is a lot of things. Their defense stinks. They make mistakes. But Caleb Williams and Zachariah Branch, and they can put up points. Austin Davis, they can put up points. USC minus 6.5. Wake Forest at Notre Dame. Sam Hartman, former Wake Forest great quarterback, now at Notre Dame, plays his former team. 24.5 is a big number, but Wake Forest is not a good team. Not the same without Sam Hartman. 24.5. Minnesota at Ohio State. Ohio State minus 27.5, easy. Oregon at Arizona State. Oregon covers the 23.5 point number. K-State at Kansas. No Jalen Daniels again. He's coming back for another year at Kansas. Kansas State has been up and down all year. I still would take K-State because they're just a better team in the Big 12. K-State minus 8.5. Florida at Missouri. Missouri is a 10.5 point favorite. They're currently ranked 9th in the country, which is a little high, but they're a very good team. Florida is not. Florida makes a lot of mistakes. I like Missouri. I like their quarterback. They can do a lot of good things. Missouri minus 10.5. Biggest game of the day. Undefeated University of Washington heading to Oregon State to play the Beavers. Washington cannot play defense, but they do have Michael Penix and a group of great wide receivers who can do it all. So it's a battle of how many points can you score. Oregon State is one of the best home fields in college football. They do have G.J. Ugalele, formerly of Notre Dame. And Oregon State's a good school. They have been all year. Oregon State and Oregon, both really good. Oregon was a 2.5 point favorite yesterday. It's now 1.5. So money is coming in on Washington. I'm leaning that direction as well. I think this is very close. I just don't know if Oregon State can match the firepower of Washington. I trust Penix and I trust Roman Odunze and Kolk to score touchdowns. They can do it. They can run the football and they have to as well. Washington needs this win to remain undefeated, to remain in the catbird seat, to get to the college football playoff. I'm going to take Washington plus 1.5, but it's the game of the day. If you're going to watch any college football game, it's this one. It's also Texas and Iowa State. Texas is out there starting running back Javion Brooks for the rest of the season with a torn ACL. However, Quinn Ewers is back. They have some of their weapons. I like Texas to win the game. See if I missed anything else. You get Nebraska at Wisconsin. I would take Wisconsin minus 5.5. Texas Tech playing UCF. UCF is a 2.5 point dog. It's an interesting one. UCF's played good football as of late. It's a solid weekend in college football. It's more about kind of escaping these games for some teams. Georgia being one of them. I mean, Mississippi, Alabama, a lot of these SEC schools, like Mississippi gets Monroe tomorrow, which is a bit of a joke. Mississippi State gets Southern Miss, and then we get our final week of the regular season the following week, games on Thursday, and you have games on Black Friday, and then the final slate on Saturday with the big matchup of Michigan and Ohio State, and who the hell knows what else is going to happen with this Michigan story, with coaches being suspended, coaches being fired, so lots happening in the world of college football. That was a lot of fun today. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. Good luck with the bets this weekend. Enjoy the early morning or afternoon hockey. And we'll recap it all right here on To The Point on Monday. So until then, take care. See you then. This is To The Point.